We are going to the Big Apple, to New York, to see one of the largest projects in the world. And like New York, it's big and it's very bold. Watch, but first, listen to the sounds of New York.
After you, no rules, no religion. To run to you, the healer that I need. Take me to the king.
Okay, Robert Yarrow.
Yes, sir. Dr. Blakely, sir.
Look, Robert, we've been colleagues for a long time, been through an awful lot of stuff.
We have indeed.
And we've seen a lot of the world.
Yeah.
And we know most of the infrastructure we have around the world, except in the developing countries, is crumbling.
Yes.
In Europe, United States, Australia. But there are people proposing new infrastructure projects. While the stuff is crumbling, why don't we just fix the old stuff? Why do new stuff? And why is this push for new infrastructure?
Well, here in New York, and I think that it's true in just a handful of places, U.S., Australia, Canada, UK, population is growing. Much of the world, go to Japan or China or large areas of Europe, population is in decline. Not the case here because we've got immigration and Australians and Americans are still banging out kids. We here in the New York region, we've got 23 million people in the region. We're expecting to have 27 million here by 2014 and by 2040. And so we need to create enormous new capacity for that growth and the mobility that's going to be needed to support that population and that economy. So here in New York, we're planning to make some big investments, not only to rebuild what we have, which we have to do. We've got some 100-year-old tunnels that are crumbling, and some of them flooded during Sandy, the big hurricane that we had a few years ago. And now it's time for us to not only do that, but also to create new capacity in all of these big systems.
Well, the project you're doing now is called Crossrail.
Yeah.
What does Crossrail mean?
Well, it's an unabashed knockoff on London Crossrail. It's called New York, New Jersey Crossrail. It's a 25-mile rail corridor stretching from Newark Airport in New Jersey to Kennedy Airport in New York City, in Queens. We'll double the capacity of the existing rail corridor and will transform the service that's provided from one that is just occasional intercity trains and commuter trains that just go into Penn Station in Manhattan and stops, to a set of through-running trains, to essentially a rapid transit type service in the fastest growing places in New York City and New Jersey.
So what is London doing? What are they connecting up?
So London is building, it's a very similar size project. It's a $23 billion U.S.
$23 billion.
$23 billion
We only have
project.
23 million people in Australia.
Yeah, well...
so $23 billion would be, $1 million for each one of them?
Yeah,
Come on, this is a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. And, of course, London and New York are similar. They're like bookends in the global economy. Both cities are about the same size with 8.5 million people. Both regions are about the same size, 22, 23 million people in each. Both economies, New York's got a $1.5 trillion economy, the region, and London's just a little bit smaller than that. London's new economic development strategy that was put forward by Boris Johnson, the mayor, and by the Cameron government, the national government, is to beat New York. And
to beat New York?
That's their global...
Not Tokyo, not
beat New York.
Beijing?
New York's got the...
Not Sydney?
New York's got the biggest metropolitan economy in the world, and one of the highest standards of living, highest standard of living of a big place. And their unabashed goal is to beat New York, and they've decided that creating new capacity in the major infrastructure systems is one of the essential parts of that strategy.
So this is a rail project?
Yes, ours is a rail project. Theirs is too. London Crossrail is a 24 mile tunneling project. Connects a set of existing commuter rail lines to the west and east of London.
So one of them is to the Docklands, which was almost like a transportation desert.
Well, it was an everything desert. It was pulverized during the Second World War. The docks, the trade went away, and it was a derelict warehouse and industrial site. and a shipping site and so forth. And then they started building Canary Wharf in the late 1980s. They've now got 105,000 people working there. They're starting to build residential, and the plan is to double the size of Canary Wharf within a generation. And the key investment to getting there is Crossrail, which brings like 750,000 people come within 45 minutes of Canary Wharf. It brings them. It brings Heathrow Airport within 37 minutes. One-seat ride.
So this is all connecting up. In an age of the internet, we're still trying to connect people physically. Why is that?
Well, because in the end, the economy is about people meeting with each other and working with each other and trading ideas and services and so forth. Face-to-face turns out to be a really important part of the way humans communicate. That we can we can do it on FaceTime or the internet and so forth, but this kind of interaction, you develop a level of understanding and engagement you can't do any other way.
So let's get to the project, this Crossrail project in New York City. So you're crossing from where to where?
We're going from Newark Airport, which is in northern New Jersey. This is about a dozen miles west of Manhattan. To Kennedy Airport, which is about a dozen miles east of Manhattan, and in a great arc that crosses the heart of the entire metropolitan.
So from airport to airport.
Airport to airport, and then with major urban centers at each end near the airports. The city of Newark, old industrial city in New Jersey near Newark Airport, and Jamaica, an old trading center in the borough of Queens next to Kennedy Airport. And these are both areas of high concentrations of minorities and high unemployment rates and so forth. So the goal is to pump new life, new accessibility, and new economic activity into these places.
So this is connecting some of the existing people into the global opportunities.
That's right. Well, and one of the things that we've learned in London is that if you want to compete globally, you've got to make it easy for people to move around and communicate within the region, but you've also got to create the global connections. The connections to the airports are really important. If you want to be a global city, you've got to have great world-class airports, and you've got to have those connected to the major populations.
But what I like about this is all of a sudden you're connecting the lowest income people to the highest value jobs.
That's right, absolutely.
And so this is not just a tunnel.
Oh yeah.
It's almost going back to when New York started with the subways.
Yeah.
It started connecting people north to south. High-income people could come down in the middle of the city.
That's the
and
idea.
lower-income people could go up.
Yeah, that's
It
the
didn't
idea.
matter whether they're maids or workers or whatever. They could mix better. So is that central
That's
to this
the idea.
project?
Well, and of course, the subways have always been the great democratic spaces of New York. There are people from every walk of life, every income, every racial group. They meet each other on the subways, and this is going to be part of the transit system in New York. This is not an elite type of service. We're going to be providing 3-minute headways on these transit lines in Queens and some of the toughest economic areas of New York City and North Jersey are going to be getting new accessibility to all of the major employment centers in the region.
All right, so we've got from JFK to Newark, and Secaucus is mentioned in the presentation.
Yep.
What is Secaucus? Is that a place? What is
it's
it?
a place, and just north of and east of Newark is a place called the Meadowlands, which is this large, and it's been.
Is that where the football stadium is?
It's where the football stadium is. It's where there's a big mall there that's about to open, and a lot of derelict industrial land and so forth. And one of those sites is in the town of Secaucus, where there is 1,000 acres that is covered with
1,000 acres. That's 250 hectares. 300 hectares.
300 hectares.
300 hectares. Yeah.
So it's big space. It's right next to the rail corridor that we're going to be upgrading. And there's an existing station there, which was not designed to do what we're proposing. It's a transfer station, but it has the potential to grow and to be transformed into a station serving a major regional center. And we're actually planning to
So
expand.
you're building a city within this system.
Well, or I like to think of it as a new district in our central business district. We're really expanding the CBD out of Manhattan into North Jersey, into Secaucus, into Queens.
So it's kind of like, remember in Sydney we have Parramatta.
Yeah, that's right.
This would be a very similar approach.
That's right.
Of uniting Parramatta with the city, shorter time left and so forth,
Yep.
allowing businesses to locate in Parramatta
Yeah.
or Secaucus in this case.
Yep.
or Newark
Yeah,
and have all the advantages of being in the central city.
exactly. That's the idea. And in that sense, we're creating new capacity for growth in the core of the region. Not just jobs, by the way, it's also population growth. We're looking at something like 70 or 80,000 new residents living in Secaucus, and probably nearly as many, not quite as many, but nearly as many in Long Island City, which would be the expansion of the central business district in Queens. Again, built to be 2 stations in Long Island City, which will anchor this redevelopment.
I recall Long Island City when I lived here, which was one big building there.
Right.
And nothing else.
That's it. And it's a 100-hectare rail yard, which is very intensively used for rail. Our proposal is to deck over the yard. A piece of it adjoining the transport station will have high density, high-rise office and residential and other activities. And then a big chunk of it will actually be covered with a new convention center. We have a very substandard aging and it's undersized convention center on the west side of Manhattan. That will move to a deck over the rail yards in Long Island City, and then we'll have 7 blocks of west side Manhattan waterfront, prime location in the city that'll be redeveloped for about 12,000 units of housing. And that in turn, the sale of the property for housing spins off several $1 billion that helps pay for all of our infrastructure.
This is a great project, but we've got 2 states, God knows how many cities. How are you going to deliver this project? Who's going to do this?
Well, I think the intent here is that we've carefully quantified the economic and transportation and other benefits, affordable housing and so forth in each state, and the only way that each state gets to grab the brass ring, all of this economic potential, all of this new development, is if the whole thing happens. You can't just do part of it, you've got to do the whole thing. And you can do it in phases. We've laid out a 4-phase strategy, so you don't need to do it all at once.
But who?
Well, and that we have
one state or another state.
Well,
what are we going to do?
There has to be either an existing and repurposed regional agency like the Port Authority that runs our airports and seaport and so forth, or it needs to be a new special purpose agency. And what we've recommended is, essentially learning from Crossrail in London, is that an existing or new bi-state authority would create a new special purpose entity just to deliver this project, go into business to deliver the project,
So
and then it would
this
go
would
out of
be
business.
much like the Gold Coast.
Yeah, that's right.
That you set up an agency that has responsibility for organizing, developing, delivering the project,
Yeah.
and then they disappear
That's right. That's the idea.
at the end of the process.
Yeah, this is something the UK has done very successfully now with Channel Tunnel Rail Link, with the Olympics, with the High Speed 1 project from Channel Tunnel to St. Pancras Station in London. They create an entity, singular focus. They're not filling potholes. They're not managing anything other than delivering this
They're not
project.
collecting tickets.
They don't do any of that stuff, and then as soon as they finish it, they complete the project, turn it over to the operating agency, dissolve the thing, go out of business.
All right, we're talking about $23 billion. Where's $23 billion?
Well, we're talking about they're doing 23. We're doing 45.
45. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, rounding error.
Yeah, well, New York's a bigger place.
Yeah, bigger place. All right, $45 billion, and I'm sure, have you called Mr. Obama and asked him for it yet?
Well, we're not going to ask him for a whole lot of it, and that'll be the last piece to come into place. That the key to the financing of this thing is the notion of value capture.
Value capture.
We're creating hundreds of billions of dollars worth of new value
In the real estate.
in the real estate and in the jobs and so forth. And the idea is to capture about a third of the taxes the incremented taxes that would be produced by this development, and dedicate that towards the infrastructure. That's going to pay for 80% of the cost of the project.
So the way this works, as I understand it, a 2-story building becomes a 16-story building.
That's right.
And the difference between the 2 stories and 16 stories is quite a lot of tax income.
That's right.
And rather than that going to the general treasury, it goes into a special fund to pay for this project.
Yeah, about a third of it goes into the
About
special.
35.
Two-thirds goes to the municipality to pay for the infrastructure and to pick up the trash and educate the kids and do all the other things that municipal governments do and state governments do. But a third of it goes into payments for the infrastructure that makes the whole thing possible.
So we put that in place, but there's still people who might be on a free ride here. If I own property in the area, and I don't increase it very much. All right, am I going to be taxed additionally to support this thing? Will it be?
Yeah, so the proposal is to create a modest. We have a payroll tax that pays for the existing MTA system here. We're talking about expanding that to New Jersey, and that would be essentially the major employers would pay a very modest tax, like 1/2 or 1% of their income would go in to pay for this thing.
Their employees will get to work on time, so this is probably worth it.
Yeah, well, and the value of their commercial property goes up, and all the rest of it. So, and they've done this in London, and in fact, the business community led the charge for. They led a campaign to create this business rate supplement that is the equivalent in London for this.
That was going to be my next question. We have two sides of this. One of them is the people. How do they get involved in this? How do they participate in the formation of a program like this? And then the other, who are the champions in the business community and other communities going to be for a project of this scale?
Yeah. Well, we think that there's nothing like enlightened self-interest to move things along. There are property owners in the major centers between Newark and Jamaica, and principally in Secaucus and Long Island City. They're major property owners. They're people that have a stake in the place already and are going to benefit enormously if this happens. And we expect them to be well motivated. And then there are others who come along because it's something that's good for the region in general, and ultimately it's good for their business because we're talking about doubling the capacity in this east-west corridor across the Hudson River. It's about a 15% increase in the total transit capacity of the region, in the fastest growing places in the region where the trains are crush loads, the buses are crush loads. We create the capacity that we're going to need for the next 50 years. So it actually avoids spending a lot of extra money in those corridors on subway lines that don't need to be built.
There's a lot of talk in Sydney and other places about getting the work to the workers by moving the location of work.
Yeah.
And are you creating some affordable housing in this program and other things where the workers closer to work and may not even take this transit, might ride their bike?
Well, we're creating these two new districts in the central business district, and so there are going to be literally hundreds of thousands of people who are going to be able to take a short bus ride or walk or take a bike ride in both New Jersey and in New York City to do that. Some people have shorter commutes if they come in from outlying areas, and they might want to decide they can move a little farther out if they want to get to more affordable housing. There are going to be activities that don't have to be in Manhattan, but want to be accessible to the workforce of Manhattan and so forth. Who can locate their businesses there or their apartments there and that sort of thing. So there are lots of ways that people are going to benefit all over the region.
What are some of the other benefits?
Well, in Secaucus, as I said, it's in the Meadowlands, which is this big wetland system which has been very debased over the years. We're expecting that a piece of the value that's created is going to be pulled out and then used to restore the big piece of the Meadowlands.
That's wonderful.
This development, we've described it as Venice on Hudson. It's going to be, this will be a place where we demonstrate all of the new techniques that we're developing to live with water, so that we keep some of it out, but we also manage it better on site. So in terms of stormwater management and storm surges and so forth, that we'll be able to accommodate those and live with them. The Meadowlands, when they're restored, will actually act as a sponge to soak up storm surges and that type of thing, benefiting the whole region. So there are lots of benefits: affordable housing, new economic activities across the region, decongesting and shortening people's commutes, one-seat rides to the airports, which New York is about the last place on earth that doesn't have a good transit connection to the airports. We'll provide that. So there are any number of obviously there's a big climate and carbon benefit because people are not going to be driving to work in the edge of the region. They'll be taking those trains to the core of the region. New York's already the most carbon efficient place in America, but it's going to become even more carbon efficient.
All this is wonderful, but who's going to take the first step here? You've got to have someone who puts their hand up and says, I'm all for this. Is this a role for a regional planning organization?
Yeah, well, so obviously, I'm now President Emeritus of RPA. We've involved RPA staff in this thing.
RPA is
the Regional Plan Association, which is a civic group which does strategic planning for the metropolitan area. We've always done that. For the last 100 years we've done that. And So I think RPA can become an advocate for this. As I said earlier, there are a bunch of business leaders who have a very direct financial stake in this thing, and they're going to be doing what they can to make this thing forward. And then we have some key city officials. We had a number of them in our presentation this morning. We had the Transportation Commissioner, the head of the City Planning Commission staff, and staff, the Planning Board, Port Authority, and others. Amtrak was there. And they're all interested in seeing how this thing will work. It's a new idea. It takes time for these things to get adopted. We need to be patient, but not too patient. And I think one or more of these groups is going to come forward and say we're going to provide the leadership on this. I teach at the university. We could be advocates. We can't lead the parade of these things. We can serve up the ideas.
Well, we both teach, we're both interested in ideas, both live in great cities. This has been a great opportunity to talk about how to make it happen.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks. Yeah.